Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Phase 2 heightened measures. I hope everyone's staying home, staying safe right now. Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, welcome to today's webinar on partnership opportunities to grow your business, specifically for our tech company. My name is Ivan. I'm a counselor with SG Tech. It is my greatest honor today to be your host together with your moderator for the panel session today. Next slide, please. So a few house rules first. We will be giving you guys access to the presentation deck. Now, for you guys to get the presentation deck for today's session, after the session is over, please kindly help us fill out the webinar, post-webinar survey form, and we'll be able to then email it to you. The recording of this webinar will also be available about 1 day after. For those of you with Q&A, and we encourage the Q&A and encourage questions from the audience member, kindly help us put it on the Q&A chat, and I will be taking some of them to ask the panelists later as well. All right, so 3 house rule. Once again, presentation deck, Q&A using the Q&A function, and the recording if you help us fill up the post-webinar link. Now, today's event is brought to you by Western Union. But before that, I thought I'd like to talk to you guys about SG Tech first. SG Tech is the premier trade association for the tech industry in Singapore. And we represent more than 1,000 members from SME to startup to the big technology company. Our job and our goal as a trade association is to look after the tech industry in Singapore and tech at core company. For those of you who are not members yet, I highly encourage you to talk to us after this webinar is over so that we are stronger together. Next slide. So today, very pleased to have Western Union joining us to give you a special presentation about different partnership opportunities to grow your business. Next slide. So the agenda for today, we'll first give you an overview of market outlook and growth opportunities, how you can partner with Western Union, and we'll end it off today with a panel discussion about growing your business through partnership. And joining us today for our speakers, next slide, is Stephen from Western Union together with Howard. And I am very pleased to have my fellow counselor and SG Tech chairperson for the SEC chapter, Sharon, to be joining us for the panel session. Okay, so without further ado, can I hand it over to Stephen, who looks after Western Union APAC currency strategists, to cover to you guys about market opportunities and outlook. Stephen, over to you.
Thank you, Ivan, and I appreciate the introduction, both myself and Howard from Western Union Business Solutions. Very excited and honoured to be able to present to you today. I'm going to start off by looking at some of the highlights of our Global Industry Outlook report that we produced over the last month or so. And we did this analysis right throughout the world to look at the key areas of industry, along with our Oxford Economics, our economic partners, to identify where we see the best growth throughout the region. Of course, we've done this in New Zealand, we've done this in Australia, we've done this in Hong Kong, but excited to be able to present the Singapore report to you today. Now, of course, I'm not the first by any means to really identify just what a pivotal moment it has been in global industry over the last 12 months. It's really been the case where we've seen a lot of the trends that have been increasingly developing in the globe, in the global economy, pivot and shift extremely quickly over the last 12 months as the impact of COVID-19 has forced businesses and consumers to significantly change their behaviour. So what I want to do today is, first of all, have a look at how we saw the economy shift in 2020, look at the impact that we've seen on businesses, and then look at where we see the opportunities for growth over the next decade in Singapore, and also looking at Hong Kong as well. But I think it's incredibly interesting to see how the economy and the Singapore economy likely to shift over the next 8 or 9 years as we live through the 2020s, particularly after such a seismic change at the start of the decade. So if we move on to the next slide, you'll be able to see the analysis of shares over the last 12 months in in Singapore and in the US as well. And clearly some significant themes emerge looking at this. In the US, we can see the best performing sector in those automobiles and components. We've seen that in a number of major economies around the world, partly because people have shunned public transport. In the US in particular, the impact of Tesla and the move into electronic vehicles has been a major driver. But some of those other sectors that have performed so strongly over the last 12 months, semiconductors and semiconductor equipment, pharmaceuticals, biotechnology and life sciences really do illustrate the last 12 months a shift into a focus on online banking, online shopping, online retailing and work from home, really very significant in that space. And of course, the impact of that rush for the COVID-19 vaccine as well. One section here in the US that we would not have expected at the start of the pandemic was the huge improvement in retailers. Retail is one of the best performing sectors. But again, this is really a clear sign of what worked and what didn't work, because right throughout the world, looking at our report, we found that retailers that had a strong online presence were able to massively outperform those businesses that didn't have that online presence. Now, of course, most businesses knew that there was a shift into online. The difference was that there were some early adopters that were able to be ahead once COVID struck. And then there were some businesses that said, we'll put that in the too hard basket, we'll get around it later. And those were the businesses in the retail space that really underperformed. So again, already in this example, you can see that it was businesses that really had got ahead of the curve that had managed to really outperform in 2020. In Singapore, a little bit of a different story, but still broadly those themes. Now, the best performing sector, those multi-utilities, again show that not everything that happened in 2020 was driven by COVID-19. That was really the outperformance of Sembcorp that drove that. But other sectors you can see, food products, again, the difference between food products and food retailing had a huge difference to whether they were prepared to take advantage of what happened during COVID-19 to be able to perform at their best, and businesses that weren't. So again, being able to have the processes in place to take advantage of dining from home compared to dining in a real world location. Again, semiconductor equipment and instruments and components really strong in terms of the performance in Singapore. And again, even in the sectors that didn't quite get into the top five, but certainly got very close. Some of the real estate businesses that were able to outperform, particularly Keppel, with its focus on data centres. So intriguing to see that really in 2020, the shares and companies that performed best were either those with a strong technology focus or even a business that was less traditionally seen as a technology firm, but more able to take advantage by having that ability, having those processes to be able to pivot to a more online friendly face during COVID-19. Again, I just want to compare it slightly. So we'll just move quickly onto the next slide to look at Hong Kong. And again, you can see a similar story where semiconductors and equipment outperformed, automobiles and components, again, outperformed, software and services outperformed, and healthcare equipment and services really the strong performers as well. So you can see within the region, clearly the businesses that performed best were those businesses that had that focus on technology. And certainly for the people, attendees on today's webinar, that certainly paints a more positive picture as we look into the future. So if we move on to the next slide and start thinking about the future, what sectors appear the most resilient and look to be the most future-proof? So we'll move on to the next slide, and really, this is the focus for right now, is that there are some sectors that have been able to perform better during this period as we slowly emerge out of COVID-19. And of course, in Singapore, we know that it's a bumpy road out of COVID-19. We've seen lockdowns re-emerge, and we've seen that right around the world. But again, digital services are the most resilient to those further lockdowns. If we have a look at this slide produced by McKinsey Consulting, it really tells you what businesses are able to benefit the most at the moment as we emerge out of this bumpy road through COVID-19. And what we've looked at here is two different metrics. How easy is it for a business to work remotely, and how much is their customer base able to benefit from that shutdown? How resilient are they in that environment? And again, shows you what we saw earlier. Information technology have a high ability to work remotely and a high ability to remain resilient even during these lockdowns. Similar in finance, and financial services have been able to withstand the difficulties of working from home, and they've found in a lot of cases have been able to take advantage of some of the shifts in the economic landscape we've seen. Real estate, more difficult, of course. Professional services, we've seen a strong ability to work remotely, and management, it's a similar story as well. Of course, as you go through other parts of the economy, consumers, of course, retail, recreation, food and accommodation, very hard to work remotely, of course, and very difficult to see the kind of continuation of their business in that environment. And so certainly for the next 12 months, though, the consumer space remains more difficult in those areas: food and accommodation, recreation, retail, and we're talking about bricks and mortar retail, again, have a difficult path ahead of them over the next 12 months. And just to, without wanting to labour the point, again, you can see the difference here. Agricultural, mining, transportation, very difficult period. Some sectors, we mentioned utilities outperforming, difficult to work remotely, but resilient in the face of shutdowns. And of course, we've all seen our power bills, our electricity bills go up over the last 12 months. We're locked at home with the air conditioning on. And then finally, at the bottom, those digital services or non-digital services, support and social, administrative, education, social services are a lot more resilient, a lot more activity, but remaining difficult to work remotely. So you can see here, it really does identify the businesses that have got the ability to benefit and work better in the environment as we emerge out of COVID-19, and the businesses that will continue to find it difficult and will be looking for ways to innovate, whether it's dealing with their customers to maintain that resilience or improving the ability to work remotely, all going to be key areas that can drive economic growth and economic improvement over the next 12 months. If we move on to the next slide, we'll look at really where we're starting to see the world emerge over the balance of the decade. And as I said, what we're looking at now is what's the future for industries post-pandemic. And again, we'll certainly look at the performance of sectors that are most likely to perform the strongest. And you can see here in Singapore, pharmaceuticals, engineering forecasted to dominate. But most interestingly, that we've seen from Singapore, it really is that high-tech manufacturing that sees the most potential economic growth. whether it be motor vehicles and parts, as you can see, the highest expectation for growth, pharmaceuticals, mechanical engineering, engineering and metal goods, our medical and surgical equipment. The top 5 or 6, the majority of those groups are in that high-tech space. Again, a space that Singapore's been focused on for a long time, but you can certainly see that is the area where growth is expected to improve the most over the balance of the decade. And as I said, this is the report that we've produced in line with Oxford Economics, our global economics partners. So the Singapore economy as a whole expected to grow 29% over the decade between 2019 and 2029. Pharmaceuticals and engineering, as we said, really the focus, but really starting to look at a key theme here, and one that I'm sure Howard will pick up on, is that we're increasingly seeing a structural shift in the Singapore economy away from basic production into the services sector. And again, in so much of what we're seeing in the technology space, whether it be in the engineering, whether it be in IT consulting or software and services, a lot of what is increasingly driving trade now is more in the services sector. And that's certainly an area that we believe has incredible potential, but also in the digital payment space, it's an area that becomes a bit more complex in terms of managing the intellectual property or those B2B payments that are different to the kind of global trade that we've been traditionally focused on, which is a lot more based on products. As we mentioned, to wrap it up, the case, the services and IT areas are really clearly expected to perform most strongly. And again, as I said, that's different to what's traditionally been seen as part of world trade. It's been focused on products, but increasingly over the next 5 years, we're seeing more and more that services become critical to global trade. And as a result, payments for those services become increasingly important as well. Again, I just wanted to touch on Hong Kong in the next slide, but it's an interesting case to see that it's a different circumstances in Hong Kong. First of all, growth appears a lot lower, almost half of what we forecast for Singapore over the decade between 2019 and 2029, 15% versus that Singapore rate of 29. But again, Hong Kong increasingly looking like it's going to be focused as that shift of capital into China. And you can see the majority of growth really coming from the financial services sector. So there's a clear shift away from a lot of the manufacturing, which is moving from Hong Kong into China, and Hong Kong becoming a lot more focused on real estate, financial services, and quite different to what we've seen the Hong Kong economy over the last 20 years. So again, it does show you that Singapore's opportunity is to really work in contrast to Hong Kong, which is very much focused in raising capital, more on your equity side, providing a channel of income into China, whereas Singapore has the ability to pivot a lot more into that high-tech services IT space. We'll move on to the next slide here as well. And again, this is part of what we've produced in association with Oxford Economics. And again, this shows you which countries in the region have the most potential to see an increase in a certain sector of growth. Now, you can see here, for example, in terms of high-tech goods, the country with the opportunity for the greatest increase in growth relative to 2019 is Vietnam here, with 118% increase in growth expected between 2019 and 2029. But that doesn't tell the whole story, of course, because that's relative to where they are in 2019. You can still see that in terms of high-tech goods, China's still the dominant player in the region, and certainly can see a much bigger, more than over 200 times what you can see in Vietnam. So this is really where the growth opportunities are, and that's important. But in terms of the actual size of the market, remains in China. But in terms of growth and looking for business opportunities, you can see that high-tech goods in Asia very much focus in Vietnam, India, and China. And again, like we mentioned earlier, high-tech goods growth, Hong Kong underperforming massively, Australia underperforming as well, and Japan, while still being sizable and ranking in the top 5, growth just isn't where it is compared to other regions. In the next slide, looking at where the opportunities of growth are for the next 12 or next balance of the decade, you can see again in IT programming and consulting, China really dominating here, both in size and in growth opportunities. But also some areas you might not have expected. Pakistan, a lot of growth from a relatively low base, it must be said. But Indonesia, again, the opportunity for programming and consulting in Indonesia are very strong as well. And again, ability to have operations in Indonesia, take advantage of that to facilitate cross-border trade and payments will be a real potential. But obviously Indonesia, with a huge population, has the ability to really provide some considerable momentum into its IT and programming and consulting sector. In the next slide, having a look at the next slide, telecommunications, you can see again China really dominating here in telecommunications, both in size and in growth. Of course, this is very much focused on the services and operation there, and the huge population of China really driving that. But again, Indonesia as well, not just in terms of improvement, but in terms of actual size as well, a huge untapped market, as you can also see in Vietnam, India, and Pakistan. And then finally, to look at telecommunications services on the equipment on the final slide, again, China dominating, India and Indonesia as well. So pretty clear where some of the real opportunities around the region are available. And again, cross-border trade and the use of services is going to become increasingly important over the next decade. I just want to finish off with a couple of other key takeaways from the report that we've produced into the region and into the sector, and really looking at where jobs are set for a dramatic shift in the next decade. We saw a really shift in some of the trends. We mentioned this already, how some of the trends that have been developing slowly through the last decade had really been accelerated, whether it be work from home, whether it be online shopping, or whether it be increasing focus on nationalism and working within regions and globalisation. All those factors have had a huge impact and been accelerated as a result of the impact of COVID-19. Having a look at how jobs shift over the next decade, and again, this is using forecasts from the US and extrapolating it to the rest of the world. But you can see where the biggest jobs expectation are really in healthcare and social assistance, educational services, and leisure and hospitality. And again, that's a bit of a indicator about where the opportunities arise as well. I guess one of the most interesting points about this is how digitalisation is having an impact significantly in reducing employment in certain sectors: retail, manufacturing, wholesale trade. You can see a fall at the bottom of the chart here, mainly as a result of the digitalisation. And again, for existing businesses, the ability to go into those businesses and enable faster digitalisation has a negative impact on the jobs, but has a huge impact on the business's profitability. So again, a shift in jobs over the next decade away from those areas that can be benefited from digitalisations and into areas where they still do require a more one-on-one service: leisure and hospitality, educational services, healthcare, and social assistance. So you can see the impact that digitalisation's creating a dramatic shift in the job makeup over the next decade. And finally, just to touch on probably, again, a point that I think Howard will take up in the next section, but we mentioned how there's an increasing shift where goods and products remain a huge part of global trade and will continue to grow. But the rapid growth of services is even quicker. And again, I mentioned earlier about where we're seeing some of the growth in services. And again, it's very, very pivotal to the audience we have today that B2B services is really the area where we're expecting to see the most rapid growth in flows out to 2025. And some of those services include royalty fees, licensing, web telecommunications, digital marketing, media streaming and gaming, financial services, insurance, consulting, procurement, sourcing and goods distribution, e-commerce, digital retail, and e-learning or online learning. A huge expectation that over the next 5 or 6 years that's where so much of the growth in international payments and international trade will come from. So it's quite clear that when we talk about how the environment and the region and the globe will develop over the next few years, it'll be increasingly seeing more B2B services, cross-border trade and cross-border transactions within that space. You can see some others as well: travel, financial, ICT services, but really that B2B services, really the driver out there in terms of where the opportunity is in trade and where the opportunity is for technology-focused businesses. I'll wrap it up there in terms of my topic. As I mentioned, rapidly changing global environment, and those changes, of course, accelerated due to COVID-19. I'll pass on now to Howard, and he'll talk about some of the ways that we're working with businesses just like yours to help enable those payments, those international payments in this increasingly important space. Howard.
Follow that. Thank you, Steve. Great job, mate, as ever. And good morning from the UK. Good afternoon to everybody in Singapore, and thank you for the opportunity to talk to you guys today. And really excited to follow on from Steve's comments about the opportunity that's in front of all of us here. The world is changing rapidly. B2B services, international payments, cross-border trade is happening at a rate of knots in all parts of the globe. That's the good news. The bad news is it's really challenging. It's a really challenging space to actually get into and to have the infrastructure in order to service and deliver those customer bases. So today, during my presentation, I'm going to give you some insights into how at Western Union Business Solutions we are helping companies, technology companies, fintechs, banks, software companies all around the world to expand their product offering to better serve their customers. And ultimately, that's what we're all here for, right? We're all here to better serve our customers and to provide additional value-add services to those customers in order to, protect or enhance wallet, maximize obviously revenue, etc., but ultimately to solve a need that a customer brings to the table. So, if you can move to the next slide, please, that'd be great. Thank you. And one more. So, what is a partnership, right? We see a lot more of it nowadays with again, industry types and customers of all shapes and sizes. And maybe traditionally some of the organizations that we are partnering with today, we would traditionally be classifying them as competition or the enemy, right? But co-opetition and frenemy is the new phrase that's coming through in the cross-border international space. We're actually opening up our rails and our capability and our strengths to our perceived competition to ultimately better serve the customer base. And ultimately, it comes down to you as the technology business, you as the partner, have your core offering that you bring to market and that you excel in. You're maybe looking to diversify that product stream and that value proposition to your client base, and maybe it's looking to bring in additional capabilities and services. And if one of those capabilities and services is the ability to perform cross-border payments for B2B, that will be a successful venture, but it will be very complicated. If you're looking to build that yourselves, thinking about bank accounts, compliance, regulation, legal, all of the challenges that come around the world, then that is complicated. And Western Union have been in the market for 170 years. It's our 170-year anniversary just this year, and it's taken us that time to get to where we are in the world. We have presence in 200 countries, able to pay in 130 currencies, as I'll touch on shortly. So the speedy route to market, the quicker route to market for a technology business or a software company or a business that again is looking to diversify their product range is to partner. And who best to partner with than the world's leading non-bank provider of cross-border payments, and an organization with agent locations above 500,000 around the world. I think there's a well-used stat that we wheel out from time to time that McDonald's and Starbucks combined don't have as many franchises as the Western Union agent network around the world. So we really are well placed to be able to bolster onto your platform or your core offering to provide that enhanced offering to your client base that enables us both to share in that growth with that client and additional revenue streams for both of us, right? And gives you the ready-made off-the-shelf solution that enables you to win, your customers to win, your shareholders to win, and ultimately everybody wins. On to the next slide, please. There are many ways to partner at Western Union Business Solutions. We understand that not everybody has the budget, the technical capability for a full technical integration, and certainly in phase one. So we can offer a very simple referral program whereby you can bolster again your value proposition to your clients by referring clients to Western Union Business Solutions. We will care for every client as though it's our last ever client, and we will cherish them and look after them and service their needs in the very best way that we can. And in return, we'll share some of that revenue growth back with you as the referral partner. If you do have just go back one more. If you do have the budget and the desire to look at a more optimized partnership offering to your client base, then a technical integration whereby we can give you access to our APIs or to our hosted solution that again you can take to market in a white labeled format or as a full API integration. Then all options are on the table, and we'd be happy to talk to you about the best route to market. And often what we see actually is we start on the left-hand side through a referral model, and then as we build the relationship and enhance the relationship, look at how we can more technically integrate. Some examples to talk you through in terms of use cases on the next slide, please. And there's many and varied, but just as some examples to maybe get your your juices flowing and your thinking caps on. We work with many organizations, a lot of fintech partners, as you'll know now. Fintech is rising at a rate of knots. I think there's an exponential number of unicorns out there, those fintechs that started recently and are now already at the billion dollar market cap range. But it may be that the fintech partner may be looking to build a complete end-to-end payment solution, cross-border payment solution for their business customers. Or, as per the highlighted example here, it may well be just that the fintech is looking to optimize or strengthen a particular currency corridor or payment corridor. And the example you can see here is, perhaps an organization that didn't have the ACH capability for New Zealand dollar transactions. We're able to come to Western Union, partner with us, and we are their New Zealand dollar ACH payment partner. And it's all organized through the integrated partnership. From a payment disbursement perspective, companies that help manage a large workforce, payroll, gig economy is another real exciting industry, services industry that we're going to see more and more of as the time progresses. But the integration and partnership with Western Union makes use of a centralized payment disbursement service that allows our partners to process thousands of cross-border payments, FX risk management, control for payment exceptions, etc. Our Mass Pay API payment technology can process 10,000 payments in a single batch in a click of a button. So really can scale an offering, whether that's a B2B payment for goods or services, or say maybe a B2C payment for a payroll run, or a gig economy, or a flex driver or an Uber driver type salary payment. By partnering with Western Union, the partner's able to bring the core value proposition of their offering to the customer, and then bolt onto that offering with that payment services, cross-border payment services that leverages the Western Union licenses and regulatory framework. On the right-hand side of the screen, under global payments, those software companies that are looking to add payments as a new feature. Right, so you got your core features. Maybe you're looking to diversify and bring that cross-border payment capability to your front end to optimize your UI and UX for your customers. Again, payroll, travel and expense software solutions have all partnered with us to add that B2C global payments as an extension to their offering. So you think about a T&E provider, their core capability is processing travel and expenses, right? Giving them the software and the technology to enable customers and employees of customers to process those. But if those employees are traveling or living overseas or living cross-border, they're going to want that payment back in local currency wherever they're based. So that ability to plug in that cross-border payment capability that manages the FX, that manages the compliance and, let's say, the regulatory checks, are all examples of the use cases that we're seeing on a daily basis today. And not a day goes by where I don't have 2 or 3 calls with new technology businesses, fintechs, who are looking to partner with Western Union to take advantage of the fact that we have that 170 years of history and legacy and learning and experience. And it's not cheap either, right? Having a regulatory framework that ticks all of the compliance requirements for operating cross-border payment functionality. Western Union invest $100 million per annum in building that infrastructure and making sure that we are bringing a compliant offering to market. So again, everybody has the opportunity to go build that themselves, but that takes time and takes very deep pockets. Partnering with Western Union, we bring all that off the shelf for you and give you the opportunity to, again, own that front end, that UX, but actually benefit from the capability that Western Union brings. On to the next slide, please. So ultimately, what is it that summarizes everything I've just said there? Ultimately partnering with Western Union gives you access to new revenue streams. Foreign exchange, the money markets are an exciting value proposition. They're an exciting place to be in. And the opportunity to move money cross-border through FX generates revenue that we can share back with you as the technology business. Number 2, enhancing your offering while maintaining focus on your product core competencies. By partnering, you don't need to build. You don't need to truly invest in all of the things that we've talked about. We bring it all off the shelf to you and give you that API integration or that hosted solution that enables you to, in a white label environment, benefit from that payment capability. As I touched on earlier, the compliance elements, that trusted global compliance for cross-border payment management. I'll never tire of saying it. Moving money cross-border is very complicated and very, very cumbersome in terms of what you need as an infrastructure behind you. 170 years at Western Union brings all of that again off the shelf to you as a technology business. Similarly with our global payment license network, as you can see in point 5.2, 130 currencies, 70 plus countries, billions of bank accounts that we've got access to around the world in order to move money cross-border, cross-currency, seamlessly and efficiently. Next slide, please. So what does it look like and how can we help? And the next slide will just talks to again some of the high level what we can do, and obviously we can support you with your queries with regards to any of these particular use cases. But we serve the business and consumer use cases, B2B payments, paying for goods or services that you're maybe importing or that you're sending payments overseas for, or B2C or even C2B. So maybe it is a payroll, a cross-border payroll or pension payments that you need to organise, or maybe you're an international student who's living in Singapore but looking to go to the University of Toronto, and you want to you've got to pay your university fees. To pay your university fees with the University of Toronto, as a student, you will use Western Union Business Solutions education solution to make those payments. So we really do serve all of the cross-border B2B, B2C, or C2B use cases. And from a branding position, we can offer co-branding, WOO-branded, or white label. So we can be completely invisible to your customers and to your technology, and just provide you with the rails and the infrastructure behind the scenes to enable that cross-border payment functionality. And again, from the integration options, API is the one that everybody's talking about at the moment, but that does require development work at your end on the UI and the UX. Maybe again a temporary solution is a hosted solution whereby we can just give you a single sign-on access to a link and then take you out to our hosted solution, which again can be fully white labeled as we talked about a bit earlier, or indeed co-branded. Or we can use Swift messaging to transfer the data to enable that international payments cross-border. Next slide, please. So what does it all mean? It's been a 15-minute whirlwind tour of the partnerships world that Western Union Business Solutions brings. But ultimately, for organizations seeking to enhance their customer offering and win new opportunities, Western Union Business Solutions provides technology that empowers you to send, receive, and manage international payments on one of the world's largest non-bank financial networks. Our mission is simply to help set you and your clients up for success by giving us 130 currency set, giving you access to that 200 countries around the world and territories. We can move money into places that many of the banks out there can't move money to. And we see a lot of our customers today through the spirit of partnership actually are financial institutions who are looking to leverage our capability to strengthen their core value proposition. Again, I've never tired of saying it, the compliance commitments, fraud monitoring, and our engagement with regulators. We bring all of that as a part of our package to you as a potential partner. We've been innovating for 170 years. Western Union, I think, sent the first satellite into space, sent the first telegram message way back when. We've continually innovated. We're the oldest fintech in the world. There's no doubt about that. And where we're going, and using the analysis that Steve shared earlier, we see the services sector is really going to be a big player in the cross-border space. And you will hear phrases like banking as a service, payments as a service, software as a service coming more and more to the fore. And Western Union are going to be right at the forefront of that innovation drive. And yeah, operational efficiencies for you and your customers. When you're paying somebody's payroll in another country, it has to get there on time. It has to get there in full value. and it has to be simple and easy to process that transaction. There's lots of steps along the way where things can go wrong. And if somebody doesn't get their payroll payment at the end of each month, that's a big problem that needs solving. Western Union Business Solutions is structured and built and has 170 years of history in being able to make those payments seamlessly and efficiently. And we understand the importance of moving money. Moving money for better is our corporate mantra. It's not just a transaction. A transaction, once it's received, generally means something. It might mean that it's the ability for somebody to send money back to their family member, to put food on the table, or to send a child to school, or to pay for medical bills for somebody. Or it might be in the B2B space, an enhancing of an economy in a certain country, providing jobs, providing economic stability and strength. Western Union really do move money for better, and we want to give that access to that capability to our potential customers and partners out there. We literally provide support every step of the way to ensure success. I think that's the last slide, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, I'll pass back to Ivan now, who I think is going to run us through a Q&A. So thank you all for your time and your engagement today.
Hey, thank you so much, Howard. And I want to bring up my fellow panelists as well. I think let's give SG Tech some time. So thank you so much, Howard, and thank you so much, Stephen, for sharing with us on what Western Union can do for tech businesses. Now, I invite once again our friends to ask us questions in the Q&A so that we can ask them later on as well. Now, in the meantime, I'd like to invite my fellow counselor from SG Tech, Ms. Sharon Teal, to also join us in this panel session. Okay. Hi, Sharon. Maybe you want to do an introduction yourself first.
Hi, Ivan. I'm Sharon, counselor and also the SEC chairman of SG Tech. I also represent a company called Inspire Tech, one of the tech firms, and a member of SG Tech. Yeah. So very happy
Sharon,
to see you. Yeah.
I think we can start with you first. Yeah. Sharon is also looks after all technology companies that are SME in nature. So we have seen since Sunday we moved back into this heightened measure. Any impact that you see for the SEC side or for the SME members, and what strategies you recommend for the technology companies moving forward? I've seen that some projects are delayed. Yeah, any suggestions or any tips?
Well, I think for us, for me personally, as my company, work from home has been something that we've been pretty used to since last year. So even when the government was sharing as the capacity could increase over time, before this heightened measure, we still kept to a certain flexibility for our staff to go back. So when the heightened measure came back, it was quite easy for us to put them back to home to work. So in terms of business, I think we have to try different ways to probably reach out to our customers digitally as much as possible. Like even some of the people who are sharing with me, they have difficulty reaching their customers on phone because as a lot of them are going to work from home. So these are some of the challenges that the business do encounter. So we are also looking into ways where we could hopefully digitally reach out to our customers other than the traditional ways like through phone. Yeah.
Got it. So adjusting measures and coming in the projects itself. So thanks so much, Sharon. So maybe let's take that same question to Stephen as well. Yeah. Heightened measures are happening in Singapore. I know you're not based here currently, but what do you recommend for the SMEs members looking at this space right now?
I know, Ivan, I'm on the phone with our Singapore team every day, so I do certainly appreciate how difficult it is for everyone on the ground there in this shift to phase 2. I guess the same lessons we've had over the last 12 months have really illustrated again as we go back into that phase 2, that ability to have that flexibility to be able to react quickly. We've really seen how important that is over the last 12 months. And, I can say for ourselves, after a long time of, trying to get, businesses to work from home, it was able to happen almost overnight. So that flexibility is there in businesses. It just comes down to the decision makers having the confidence to make those changes. So I think that's probably the main factor. Again, being prepared for anything, and when we talked about which retailers did well over the last 12 months and which retailers didn't, it was those that had the foresight to see how things were changing and to move ahead earlier rather than later. That's really made the big difference. And then finally, maintaining that working capital. I mean, when things are suddenly interrupted again, it's really quite critical that businesses maintain their funding. That's something very close to our hearts here at Western Union, apart from the payment side of the equation that Howard spoke so eloquently about. Helping businesses to manage their foreign exchange risk and to make sure they're in a solid position to be able to go through any tougher times would really be the main focus, I think, for what businesses need to do now. And the reality is what they need to do all times, have that good core framework of running a business in the right way, really just becomes evident in these kind of times.
Running a business, yeah, I think adapting is what I hear from both of you. So speaking of adaptation, I think this is a great time to talk about some technical stuff. I think everyone here is familiar with API because they're all technology companies. But how can this API be used, and how can they be good for these technology businesses? Perhaps Howard, you'll be the best person to share on this.
Sure, yeah, thanks, Ivan. Good question. It's one of those that I think I touched on during the presentation, but I think everyone's talking about API at the moment. Everyone, and it's going to really revolutionize the payments industry for me. I think it's about speed, it's about efficiency, it's about providing the access to that partner's services and solution in a really slick way, whereby, as you say, we see it with a lot of our customers in the technology space globally, where the end customer actually perhaps wouldn't even know that Western Union Business Solutions were involved, because we're practically invisible. The UI, the UX is all it's all owned. The infrastructure is all owned by the partner. So it looks like you're a payroll company or a T&E company that's doing everything else that you're doing. However, when you press that button to process that international payment, to quote that FX rate, that's all being powered by Western Union, and that's all being provided in literally the click of a button. The API response time is seconds, and then once the payments are organized, or the API is processed, the use of webhooks then to further provide status updates and everything else, it's all instant, it's all on demand, and we all know that that's the way the world is at the moment, right? Everything has to be now, and if not now, it's probably a bit too late. So API, I think, gives that speed and that ability to diversify your product set, which is probably a link to the earlier question in terms of what can we do in these times. Look to diversify, but look to the fastest and most efficient way to bring additional core competencies to your core capabilities today.
So API to integrate fast and to build the core capability. So let's answer one of Danny's question then. Since we talk about this, Howard, how do you charge for the services like this API keys and stuff? Can you give us an overview?
Yeah, I mean, it varies by use case. It depends on what the type of use case we're talking about. But we give access to our developer portal, where our MassPay API and our APIs are housed. You can look at them for free. You can sample them in our sandbox environment and see what you would need to do in order to consume them. And then we'll build a commercial offer to you as the potential partner that will depend on where are your customers based, what are their payment needs, what does the opportunity look like, and we'll put a package together that will make that attractive and enable you to go and win some more business.
Got it. And leading on to one of our SG Tech members, Shin Chong question, what's the best way to reach out? Should they reach out to Howard? Should they reach out to Stephen? For all the SME members here who are interested in working in Western Union.
That's a good question. I'll happily take the inquiries, but I think we've got a few of our go-to-market team locally. I'm based in the UK, so probably better to use our go-to-market team locally. So we'll perhaps feed that back to you in terms of contact details, who the best person to go to is. But that's a very encouraging question, Ivan. I love that question, by the way.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of them asking how to reach out to you. So SG
very good.
SG Tech, and later when we send out the survey and we send out the deck, for those of you who wants to reach out Western Union, I think fill out the survey form after the session is over, and we'll provide you someone to email to the Western Union team after this.
It can be me, just to be clear, but I think we might be having some local resources to support you.
Great. Now, before I ask Stephen, Sharon, cryptocurrency, are you accepting it as a form of payment? Sharon, you are muted.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to unmute. For me, no, not at the moment.
Any plans to?
No.
Okay. So then, Stephen,
because anyway, my customers are mostly enterprise, so I don't think they are also into that yet.
Yeah. Not into that. So how about Stephen? Is cryptocurrency going to be something big, and is it going to change up the FX model of how we pay?
I think it will. Very rarely Howard lets me get a question in, but I thought he might let me do this one. I think it will be a significant impact on the FX market, but I still think we're quite a way away from working out which is going to be the end winner in these sort of crypto wars at the moment in terms of what's going to be the most utilised. One of my favourite analogies is back in the 1920s, there was almost 2,000 automobile companies in the US. Of course, now there's sort of 3 or 4 dominant automobile companies. So it's a case of we're in the very early stages now and waiting to see which one eventually or which series of them ends up becoming the most effective way of making payments. But for now, I know that we introduced a pilot scheme a couple of years ago, and we weren't able to get the kind of speed or transactional cost benefits for our clients that we were able to. That's really what's going to be the driver, I think, is when we can get a great result for our clients. But for now, it still seems to be up in the air.
Basically not yet. And it's coming soon. So I think Howard has something to add, right? It was a digital, so cryptocurrency going to be far off. Even Tesla has stopped to accept it. What will be the digital innovation in the payments industry space?
Yeah, I think lots of them, and lots of them coming at us fast. I think probably the most prominent ones would be real-time payments.
Yes.
Again, everybody wants everything now. They want to press a button and be able to have receipt of funds at the other end immediately. So that's coming at a rate of knots. I think not just in payments, but in technology generally, but certainly we're starting to see more use of it in payments would be artificial intelligence, using computers and robots to predict certain outcomes, to help us to onboard customers, help us to do compliance checks and all the other good stuff. So I think artificial intelligence is going to be a prominent digital innovation. And then I don't know too much about this. I'm a bit of a Luddite in this regard, but I think 5G speeds and the speed of telecommunication is probably going to make things most exciting going forward.
For the audience member who knows me, as you guys know, I'm also in the payment space for my professional career. So RTS is going to change the space, as how consumer pay, and I'm very sure businesses soon, right? No one's going to wait 3 days for their payroll to be deposited in a bank account anymore. ACH is going to be outdated, and being able to take advantage of all this thing is going to make and change the SME business landscape tremendously for so many businesses.
Yeah,
okay.
100%.
This is a good one. And so let's talk about risk and security then. Before we round it back to how to work together. We're getting a bit concerned about cross-border. Businesses are very globalized now. We're sending money up left, right, center. And a lot of businesses in Singapore have been stopped by the bank saying, why are you transferring X amount of money to X to Y destination itself. Is there ways that Western Union help with this part of the compliance process of transferring money?
We probably ask the same questions, but we do it for the right reasons, and we do it efficiently and effectively. It's all about knowing your customer, right? KYC is so important in this space. So having an understanding at the start of the journey in terms of what the customer's looking to do, why they're looking to do it, and where they're looking to do it to, providing we have a good understanding of that, then we can set the expectation of our compliance teams. And then when the transaction monitoring kicks in, and we monitor every single transaction that goes out the door. If something looks a little bit odd or doesn't look like it's in line with what we originally thought it would be, we're going to come and ask the question. We have to, and we never apologize for that, because we're protecting ourselves, we're protecting the partner, and we're protecting the client. It is a bit of a murky world out there. Fraud is rife, unfortunately, and there's a lot of very clever technology that's able to defraud people. So we take all of the appropriate measures to protect that from happening. That may feel a bit uncomfortable at times, and to the tone of the question, I can see why it is frustrating. We don't have a magic wand that makes all that go away. All that we will do is we'll get things done speedily and efficiently. This is all that we do. We move, I think it's 27 transactions around the world every second. So across the whole Western Union family. So we've got a lot of transactions to monitor. So we know what we're doing, and we'll do it quickly and efficiently, and hopefully make the money move safely and efficiently.
Very assuring to hear that. Okay, audience member, we encourage you to ask us more questions. We still have about 5-10 minutes. Keep the questions coming. So, one more thing we want to talk about is, digitalization and global trade. Yeah, like how is digitalization going to affect global trade today? We went through the first wave, which was globalization. Now it's the second wave, which is digitalization. So how does it affect the first wave? Stephen, maybe to you.
Yeah, so that was one of the points we touched on earlier, but it's just quite incredible how we've seen this increase in services trade, driven very much by digitalisation. That's why it's exciting to be able to talk to the attendees on today's webinar. And we've looked at some of the data that we've seen that over the next 5 years expects global services trade to go from $6 trillion to $8 trillion. So it's an incredible growth, and increasingly it's becoming a greater and greater proportion of global trade in general. So, as global trade grows, and particularly as you talk about these, cross-payment, the cross-border payments, the ability to source something from one area and bring it somewhere else, it really does have great benefits in general. So, we're really looking forward to helping businesses with that stage. This digitalisation really drives that global trade, greater and greater.
Got it. So I think we're going to really wrap it up this session. We have a question for Sharon. Then, what's your outlook for the SME in the technology space for this year?
I think.
And any advice for them? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think a lot of businesses in Singapore, they are going through digitalization awakening, or even in the process of digitalization. So I think if some of the SMEs here could also try to leverage on, or rather help the customers in the digitalization process, looking at perhaps helping them to improve their business models through digitalization, I think that would be something that is worth looking into, especially for the tech SMEs here.
Opportunities, got it. And how about you, Stephen and Howard? Like globally, where are we seeing the opportunities to close out today's session, for the rest of the SME members in Singapore the year ahead?
Yeah, I think it's opportunity, right? It's thinking on your feet. It's bolting down your core competencies and core value proposition, and then having your eyes open to see what else is out there. You think about the gig economy. How many people around the world today are doing a job that never even existed 3 years ago, right? An Uber driver, or a Just Eats, or a door drop driver. These are newly created jobs. It's a newly created market, and it's being at the forefront of that type of innovation. and then having the partnership or the breadth of value proposition to service these growing markets.
And Stephen?
Yeah, no, particularly what Howard said about the gig economy is an area that we see that real opportunity at the moment. And, it's again, it's the gig economy is that beautiful meeting of, technology and global trade and the ability to, stream money, from one part of the world to another part of the world, just to help that sort of economic wealth move around the world. Historically, we've seen, trade, goods, services has been, the greatest way to sort of improve the overall, human experience. The ability that we've seen, that, increase in seeing so many people lifted out of global poverty over the last 30 years as globalization and global trade has increased. And we mentioned some of the big changes in the globe over the last 5 years, and globalization's got a bit on the nose over the last 5 or 6 years, but it's got the incredible ability to be able to provide a much greater result for humankind in general, and especially as Howard said about the gig economy. So we're really excited about that. And again, it's that SME space. It's the smaller businesses to be able to do something out of your bedroom that previously was just impossible to be done. Something like Fiverr, where people are able to do a logo and to get that done quicker. Of people operating with virtual assistants, operating out of another country. It's got incredible benefit. So that's what we're particularly excited about. And I think that gig economy SME space really meshes well together to provide great results in general.
I think this is amazing, right? There are a few questions on competitor analysis between WU and, of course, other great players in the market. I leave that to Western Union to answer them individually after the call is over. But I think thank you so much for the panelists, right? For the SME here, coming from the payment industry itself, nowhere else in time is the same small SME able to get the same access to the same financial instrument that big companies that I'm so lucky to be able to work for have today. Yeah, the same ACH process which was run in the US in 1960s today is in RTS transaction process, and the same SME at 1/10 the cost is able to access the RTS cost without using ACH. It's amazing, right? The world truly is globalized and digitalized, never before. And with the right partner, including Western Union, you are able to access all of this. Payments is just a function of a lot of our work, but it's a very core essential utility that ensure the worlds continue keep moving and continue keep flowing. So I strongly urge you guys, we're going to show you guys the survey link soon, and there are a lot of people asking us to link you up with Western Union. We have to do it in a more structured approach in the digitalized space. Fill out the survey and we will get it and we'll get you the correct information after the session is over. So on behalf of SG, thank you so much, Howard. Thank you so much, Stephen. And of course, Sharon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great seeing you all.
All right, guys.
Thank you, Ivan. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you for having us on.
All right, guys. So once again, scan the QR code now, fill it up, and we'll get you guys connected across either Howard and Stephen or his team or the local go-to-market people. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Stay safe and have a great evening ahead. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.